startup funding winter. Where are we? End of it? Rebound? Three things you look for in an entrepreneur.
I like humility and less of arrogance because I think that has a rub off in everything they do. I like entrepreneurs who have a very strong bias towards understanding India. I like entrepreneurs who are committed to the domain for a good 10-15 years. I just love entrepreneurs who are slightly more humble and grounded. But that does not mean that there's no successful arrogant entrepreneur.
Yes.
Let's not. What I want to see in the entrepreneur is still the energy and the ability to be flexible about what to build. But I think entrepreneurs who come into the space thinking that they know the ultimate thing that needs to be built, I think is a red flag.
Prashanth, we've almost forgotten that you are this sharp investor, founding partner of Accel India, and who's played such a pivotal, such a foundational role in shaping Bangalore's and maybe India's startup landscape. Let's start with where it all began. You as a investor in the iconic Flipkart sort of investment that Accel made you.
Start a little bit before that, where I want to talk about my co-founders, right? So Subrato and Mahendran, and you need a team that really was very complementary and had very diverse capabilities to come together, and we were that way, very fortunate that three of us found each other to create Erasmic, which then became Accel. So I just wanted to mention that because it's really important that Accel would not have been Accel if three of us didn't get together. And Subrato, of course, I had a older relationship with from my grad school days in the US, so where we studied together. I think before that I was an entrepreneur, and in my entrepreneurial days, there's one, my very first entrepreneurial stint after moving back from the US was actually something I did with my wife, Amita.
Seriously?
Yes.
What was that?
It was this company called Visual Reality, where we were training people for multimedia.
Okay.
And she was helping me in that.
You guys are already married then, huh?
Yeah, of course. I moved back from the US, right? And that was, again, one of my best decisions in life, to come back to Bangalore. But, so Amita really kind of was my first co-founder, so to speak, in my first venture, which then became a creative studio.
Okay.
And that's where I learned a lot about dealing with creative people and working with creative people. So learned a lot of that business.
And she was the creative?
No, she was more operational.
Okay.
She ran the my Amita is great with money, and I'm a little bit loose with money.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she's just very good in making sure that things are tight and things work. But later on, she, of course, moved to the education field, and that was her calling, that she wanted to do something in the Montessori early childhood learning space. There I kind of helped her get started with the old Montessori schools, and now she owns about 4-5 schools in Bangalore. But that has been also an interesting journey for me, understanding the school and the education ecosystem. But she's been very supportive in every, like I said, from my very first startup that I did in India to me doing these crazy number of things on a day-to-day basis.
In fact, I may be digressing, but having a partner, a wife, a spouse who is able to, because you spend so much time traveling, doing so many things. How difficult or easy is it, and how do you make that happen?
I mean, you need a lot of support um, from your spouse, and Amita has given me that support. And
Do you want to elaborate a little?
yeah,
What kind of support are you
yeah,
talking about?
I think the support is, of course, on one dimension, putting up with my travel and putting up with a lot of time that I spend away from home. The second kind of support is that there have been really times in my entrepreneurial journey where a more straightforward financial path for me would have maybe just been less painful for the whole family, right?
Okay.
So during those times, I think her intervention in financially supporting me, and also, uh, uh, you know, kind of being okay with putting up with the stress of what we had to go through as entrepreneur during my entrepreneurial ventures were huge for me. I mean, if I can imagine, if that was stressful at home, there's no way I could have handled that situation in a startup kind of environment, because when at the time when I did my first startup here in India, I was already married, right? So I already had a kid. So it was a where I had to kind of meet expectations at home, and also do this startup, and uh, with no venture funding and with no other support in the early days. So I think huge support from Amita, and I think just the her openness to me experimenting and doing all these multitude of other things that I do, is because she's uh, sometimes involved in it, and is like when it comes to philanthropy, she has started to kind of get very involved and take forward a lot of initiatives that I initially might have started, right? So uh, it's been a good partnership that way in times when I really needed an anchor and somebody who could support.
Fantastic, Prashant. And from a co-founder that your wife was, to, of course, being on the journey together. And then you, as an investor, turning from an entrepreneurial journey to turning into an investor.
Investor, yeah.
It would be good to sort of recall that era when you became an entrepreneur and then an investor, and what the landscape looked like in the early 2000s, right? Um, and I'm sure we are at a very different place. Just getting a sense of the journey of the landscape.
Yeah, there was no startup ecosystem, right? So we have spoken about it in the book. So I'll not dwell too much into it. But um, as investors, when we started out in Erasmic, we really did not have a set of entrepreneurs who would come and pitch us and seek for money. So you almost had to go seeking for entrepreneurs and seeking for ideas. So we have come from then to today, right? And you also did not have other funds in the country to look up to, or other funds in the country to work with. So you pretty much were the only fund in pretty much in Bangalore, right? It was quite adventurous, to say the
In
least.
fact, Flipkart deal that you guys did was probably an iconic, risky bet that
Risky.
you seemed like. Tell us a bit about.
Yeah, huge. And we had a analyst, an associate, sorry, with us, Abhishek Goel, right? So
Okay.
Abhishek was roommates, or was staying in the same community as Sachin and Benny, and that's how he had almost like a ringside view on what is happening with that startup. So his ability to connect us and help us see what they were constantly innovating and changing, and because they kept doing something new every month, every week, and they would come and present that to us, and we were in a sense wow, wow. And Abhishek finally pushed us to say, come on,
You guys were dismissive in the beginning?
of course we were dismissive because we just didn't know what to expect, right, from e-commerce. And we also had this fear of e-commerce being a big money play, and we were a very small fund. So I think a combination of this, and e-commerce in those days in India was non-existent for two reasons. One, no connectivity. And second, I think the idea that you need to build something that was customer first, and that in the tech world was not, I mean, the whole consumer world had not kind of pervaded, the consumer obsession, consumer thinking had not pervaded in the tech world. So even if somebody started, if a tech person started a venture in those days, I think they didn't come from a consumer first frame of mind. So Sachin and Binny, I think, was what we started observing, was what was their unique differentiation, that they had the customer in the center of their initiatives, what they wanted to make a difference, how they wanted to change the e-commerce industry in India. And we finally gave in and said, yes, we will invest. And Shubhrato has played a very key role. He was more involved in Flipkart than me, right? So he was on the board of Flipkart, and was very active in the early days in co-creating a lot of what happened in Flipkart.
Is that the biggest deal that you would have done at Accel in terms of the biggest
It is
payback?
still among the biggest deals in the country ever.
Yeah, correct.
Right? So I don't think there's any other deal that has since happened yet.
What,
in our
$16
country.
billion buyout, no?
Buyout, and
What?
just recently they again bought out at almost twice that valuation.
Yeah.
So at 35-40 billion, I think it is the biggest company ever built in India. So it's very hugely privileged to have intersected with Sachin and Binny, and having somebody like Abhishek Goel in our team,
who's founder of Traction, right?
Founder of Traction, right? So and Mahindran, who was our other co-founder, was also very instrumental in helping them with the regulatory challenges which were there in the ecosystem at that point in time in e-commerce. So it was a combination of all of us that really made Flipkart work.
So I have a question for you as an investor, Prashanth. When you first began investing in late 2006-07, that era, to now, I'm sure there's so much you've learned as an investor. One, in what way you've changed as an investor, you've grown as an investor. And two, what are the things that you look for in a startup, an entrepreneur, as you vet a deal? Tell us a bit about that.
A lot of expectations on the Indian consumer market, the size of the consumer market has been a big revelation and learning. And it is not that the consumer market does not exist, but it's the nuance that there are multiple consumer markets in India, and you need to build very different products. Maybe the FMCG world, maybe the other old brand world knew about it, but for us tech investors, when we started building services and conveniences for the urban Indian first, and then of course later now for Bharat, it was very important to understand that this India 1, India 2, India 3, India 4, I don't know, there are like 5 Indias,
Yeah.
right? So huge learning, don't just imagine that everybody buys the same way and everybody affords the same thing. So I know it now. It in hindsight looks like, how could we be so stupid and think that 200 million Indians would buy anything that we provided. The second big learning, and I think it's maybe a problem in other countries too, but I think India has this unique situation where it's as much about technology and it's as much about making the business model work for India. And first you pick which India, and then that India actually has so many challenges in making money. It's almost like your ingenuity in engineering a business model trumps any other capability you have as an entrepreneur. It's that difficult to make money in India and to make a profit and meet the customer's expectations and deliver that value and scale and also make money, right? So we have learned a lot in what kind of an entrepreneur or a co-founding team do you really require to build for this very complex situation in India, where and we have, of course, two big parts to what we do at Accel. One we build for India, and one we build globally from India.
Sure.
So for a minute, I'm just talking about building for India.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the big learning. The third learning is that because the business model, and it's not the generic tech that you can build, which is so important in India, you need entrepreneurs who kind of have that understanding or empathy for the consumer,
Mm-hmm.
or are able to quickly get that sense for where value is with the consumer, or else you'll build a lot of useless tech.
Okay.
Right? And that we have faced startup after startup, right? So it's a if you're just a very smart tech entrepreneur, I think it just does not mean that you are vested enough, or you have immersed yourself enough, or have understood where you need to converge with the consumer in terms of that value profit kind of intersection sweet spot, right? That discovering that, I think, requires founders who have gotten very deep and have really soaked in challenges and intricacies of each of these sectors. And there's opportunities in multiple places, but so I think there is a better appreciation of entrepreneurs with a little bit of domain expertise, and why and also having a better appreciation themselves of what it means to make money in India. So it is, of course, we do understand it, we appreciate the challenges, and we are willing to kind of work with the entrepreneur, but the entrepreneur should also recognize and realize that that is the biggest challenge in this country. The opportunity is massive, but making money is a huge challenge here.
So is it this trust and profitability that you're talking about?
It's about the understanding of the business model and the value that you're delivering to the consumer.
Sure.
That is a prerequisite, and then profits just come from that, right? And underlying that is the domain. There's another dimension that we have learned. Many businesses need entrepreneurs who can do in that space, in that sphere, a few set of things. Some of them adjacent, right? To be able to really stitch together a holistic solution, or in some cases, in a few of our companies, we needed entrepreneurs who were not only great in building the consumer part of the business, but also were able to kind of understand the whole value chain the whole supply chain,
Yeah.
and the manufacturing aspects of the business. So we've also come to appreciate entrepreneurs who are multidimensional in their capability and who are able to either build these capabilities themselves or be able to relate to and appreciate and work with other co-founders who understand these other aspects of the value chain, which in many cases in India you seem to kind of traverse and build for in totality the entire value chain to be able to capture full value. If you don't capture that full value, you just don't have enough of a profit pool to be able to make money. So when you say you appreciate, of course we all appreciate profits, right? We all want entrepreneurs who can build very profitable company. But who are those entrepreneurs is what we have slowly discovered and have in these 15-20 years gotten better at.
So this also tells me then, Prashant, that probably do you see a shift in bias for a relatively more seasoned, a little more experienced and rounded entrepreneurs? That's one. And second, what about serial entrepreneurs? Do you have a bias for them? Are there personality traits that's a complete put off or a complete put on for you as an investor?
My learning on serial entrepreneurs is the space matters.
Okay.
I think the best value I've seen being derived from a serial entrepreneur is if they, in some sense, find adjacencies or extensions and are able to create something that can leverage their current expertise more directly. Just because I was an entrepreneur in SpaceX, I think if you're an entrepreneur in space wide, I don't think there is. I mean, yes, generically speaking, being an entrepreneur once means that you'll do a few things differently, but I don't think it gives you a material advantage to be much better than somebody else who's been in that domain before. This goes back to my point that actually being in that domain and soaking that in and then building on that in India is more important, and I think in many other countries too. And I think this is especially true for serial entrepreneurs. So I would really back a serial entrepreneur any day if they kind of are in the zone.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about gut instinct versus this, calculation at the back end, and then making your bets? And considering your rich experience, are you at a go?
No, I think it is more. I think gut has a small place. I think experience matters. If you've been through 10 failures and 10 successes, there's a lot that you learn. And I think there is some room for intuition. There is some room for gut, but I would say it's like almost 80-20.
It is all science.
It is not science. It is like a generative AI problem right today. So there is a lot of past experiences and past situations you've been in. There's a lot of past business models that you've participated in, a good host of things that have worked, not worked, so that your own generative model
is throwing up.
they're kind of throwing up these signals, right? Hey, you know what, this thing may work, this thing may not work. So you just I think you just leverage your generative models that you build over time. The intuition part is, I think, more related to, there are some businesses that you relate to more as an investor over time. And you realize that you enjoy those businesses better, and you also seem to get the innate challenges of it and the thrills of that business. Also, you seem to relate to it better.
Do you want to pick investment that kind of aligns
I think
with that?
over time, I've come to appreciate a lot of the consumer space, right? So I did not start out in the consumer space. I mean, we all started out. I mean, of course, Flipkart was a big consumer business, but when it comes to brands, and my investment in Bluestone is a good example. Again, understanding of the B2B industry with my investment in infra.market was a great learning, and I started get to so you kind of pick 2-3 spaces.
That's your favorite.
As it's it's a favorite, and I think it kind of you do that space, and other entrepreneurs think that you understand the space, and those entrepreneurs end up coming to you, and it kind of compounds, and there's a nice virtuous thing that builds up. So I think there is this combination in your generative model of the past experiences, the spaces that you seem to like, the spaces that you seem to relate to, and you want to do more, and that kind of drives the next
The other
investment that
question,
you do.
Prashanth, the outlier behavior where you think like something just attracts your attention, like you look at an entrepreneur, 2-3 things you look at and it just impresses you, or it puts you off. What are those 2-3 traits on the plus side and on the minus side that you want to list out?
Yeah, I just love entrepreneurs who are slightly more humble and grounded. I mean, that's me personally, right? So I want entrepreneurs who I relate to and I can easily work with. Yes, there are a few entrepreneurs who are a bit more maverick and who probably will also create larger outlier investments. I seem to be more in the camp of working with entrepreneurs who go deep into a space, and who are really very grounded in some sense, right? So I think there's nothing right or wrong in both kinds of
Sure.
entrepreneurs.
It's your bias, personal
It's
bias.
my personal bias. But what I want to see in the entrepreneur is still the energy and the ability to be flexible about what to build, and be very open on what may work, right? This is very different from uh, being slightly grounded and humble, right?
Yeah.
So your ability to have an open mind on what may really work, and be able to iterate very quickly, and kind of converge on something in a short period of time, and not have this know-it-all attitude. See, you need to come in. I think entrepreneurs who come into a space thinking they know the consumer well is a good thing, right? So
Yeah.
that's a good starting point. But I think entrepreneurs who come into the space thinking that they know the ultimate thing that needs to be built, I think is a red flag, right? So
So you're talking about the difference between confidence and arrogance, I guess.
yeah, arrogance. You need to have a set of beliefs, and you need to have a set of convictions that will keep you in good stead in a very very challenging journey as an entrepreneur, right? But I don't think arrogance is any has any complementary value to this journey. But that does not mean that there's no successful arrogant entrepreneur.
Yes.
Let's not say that, okay, if you're arrogant, you're not a successful entrepreneur. No, there are, but it's a trait, right? It's every person is different. But what is really important is being flexible in arriving at that end product that really works, and being able to be very fast and nimble in doing whatever it takes to get there is where I've seen the strength is of the best entrepreneurs.
Do relationships also have an impact? Like people you have familiarity, does it also spill over to your bets? in the startup world. Do you see that, or no relationships? You are a sharp investor, dispassionate investor who makes an objective decision without nodding to relationships or networks that the person
I
comes
think
to.
networks make a big
Hmm.
difference. Networks are a big value add. I think a lot of what we end up connecting with and intersecting with has a lot to do with the networks. And why networks build and form are also because of relationships,
Sure.
right? I think there is comfort that we derive from relationships that, I mean, you would not use that as one and the only one parameter, but I think having known somebody, having a strong reference of somebody who with whom you have a great relationship, I think all of those play into, because we are going into these investments in many cases not knowing the person very well. So if we have had a relationship uh, and I think it makes a big difference. I think there is value to relationships.
Where we are right now today as a startup world, the funding winter, AI, the big disruption, and also looking ahead, the foundational pillars, if we can say so, of the startup world is kind of coming together.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's amidst disruption. How do you see it? Where we are, the shifting sands, and where we are headed, the foundational pillars that you see are emerging for Bangalore, for startup, and maybe world.
See, Bangalore has reinvented itself, in every era, and now I think these spaces that you're talking about are what you would call as deep tech. So I think we have, as a industry, as a startup ecosystem, done everything and anything for the urban consumer. We have done a lot to build efficiency for businesses and the whole B2B businesses. We have done quite a bit for Bharat, which is the agri entrepreneur, has really changed the lives of a rural farmer and a lot in the rural ecosystem. So I think we have done a lot of that. And there have been multiple entrepreneurs who have also built enterprise solutions for the global markets. I believe that there is 2-3 new aspects that would require reinvention and kind of recalibration of what we are doing as a startup ecosystem. One is our ability to do what I would call as slightly more deeper IP and tech oriented businesses from India.
Okay.
I don't think we are there yet. There is a lag in innovation. We participate in innovation. We don't seed innovation in many cases from here, right? So, but it's changing. We are starting to see whether it's in AI, in space tech, in the EV space, in all these spaces, we are starting to see innovation that is a bit more dispersed, that is not only emanating from the Valley or Europe, but but I think it's still at a scale relatively very small scale. So I think we have to in the next 10 years be 10x or 100x to really make a dent.
Sure.
That's how big some of these spaces are.
You're optimistic, I'm presuming.
Of course, I mean, India, I mean, we have huge confidence in our entrepreneurs. And this confidence comes from, Malini, if you see what has been built in 15 years, it is mind-boggling. When we started Erasmic and Accel and what we saw and where we are today, I think this shift and this change, I think, is squarely because of the ingenuity and the capability of the Indian entrepreneur. And there is a belief that they will step up and be able to take up this new challenge of being more IP led, being more product innovation led, and build for India and for the world. So I think there is a big challenge there, and I think they will step up to it. The second dimension is manufacturing, and we've had 30-40 years where we had kind of given up on manufacturing in this country. No investment, absolutely no confidence or no belief that we can build anything or manufacture anything in this country, right? So we were really, really in the dumps when it comes to manufacturing, and nobody ever invested in it. Things are changing. I think Make in India has been a great initiative, but I think it is, again, I think Make in India is an aspirational intention that the government put in place, right? But the entrepreneur has to really see that as a true opportunity and has to dive in. The investors should really believe that this is the next big space in the country. They should then start putting money where they need to. So I think a lot of these, and of course, the global supply chain diversification away from China. So there is a good coming together of all of these, where I believe that a lot of entrepreneurship in India will gravitate towards manufacturing, because we have not built 1% of what can be built from India. And all of that has been demonstrated in 15, 20 years in China. So I don't believe that our entrepreneurs are any less, are less capable. And the global opportunities in wanting a diverse supply chain that, of course, as China, but as other countries too, is also very high priority. So I think China came in because globally people wanted something cheap. So that was their kind of reason to become large. And, I think now we have to be cheap, of course, and you got
It's a given.
It's a given. But I think now we have to also have some IP, some technology. The same manufacturing that was done in China 15 years ago cannot be done in India today, right? So when I say that we will have our place in this global supply chain, we will not have it by replicating what China did 15 years ago. We will have it if we kind of leverage the changes in technology. It could be AI, it could be more sustainable manufacturing. There is many new dimensions to what would be today's manufacturing that would fit in this global supply chain. And I think on Indian entrepreneurs, I'm starting to see a lot of examples. Infra.market is a great example, where everything that they supply is full stack integrated into their own manufacturing. So we are going from a country of traders to a country of builders. And when we think of building, I think till now the profitable thing to do was to build software, and which is great, right? And you have created millions of jobs building software. But I think the world requires a lot of physical products, real tangible products, everything from your apparel to your shoes to your luggages to, there are a gazillion number of products that need to be built. And 60 to 70% of that is being imported. And it is a shame, right? When a country has the best minds, the best capabilities, but we either for lack of capital, let's also not forget that the manufacturing world and the ecosystem is very different from the urban environment where startups have got built so far. So it would require, a shift in thinking, a shift in adapting to a world where you can question if the ease of doing business is the same as what it was in other parts of the world, or what it is still in other parts of the world where manufacturing flourished and thrived, right? So we still have those challenges, and I'm not kind of for a minute saying that ease of doing business is gotten better, but there are still a lot of challenges which will hold us back. So, but that does not necessarily mean that our entrepreneurs would not find a way to kind of work in spite of that environment and be able to build for India and for the rest of the world. So that's a huge space. So deep tech and manufacturing, two very, and there is also convergence of these when it comes to, substituting defense imports. It is deep tech and it is manufacturing. So space tech is deep tech and a lot of high tech manufacturing when it comes to space tech, aerospace, and multitude of these industries.
Everybody's talking about AI and how it's shifting the earth and the startup world. Do you have a view, and also India view?
See, we are at a stage in India where the market is getting built in multiple different spaces, and AI has a role in many of them, but AI is not central in a lot of them, right? So the relevance of AI in India is huge when you pick certain pockets, and there are certain other sectors and areas where AI is not right and center, right? So I'm kind of basing it on what hat you wear at a given point in time. Are you wearing the hat of a AI first tech investor, or are you wearing the hat of an of someone who looks at the diverse set of opportunities in the next 10, 20 years as we go from a $4 trillion economy to $8 trillion economy? A lot of it will have an AI component, but will be much more than AI, right?
Sure.
But as a tech VC, for us at Accel, I think AI is super, super important, because a lot of the tech influence is going to be driven by AI. And if you are not AI first within the next 2-3 years, a lot of what you build, you can just throw it into some dustbin somewhere, right? So it's existential for a lot of our startups in many spaces, which are part of the global tech ecosystem. But the Indian entrepreneur ecosystem is much larger. The canvas is much bigger. So if you are building solutions that are going to make the Indian farmer more efficient and help him, is there a technology component there? A little bit. But is it all AI? Absolutely not, right? So AI has its place, and for a fund like us is very, very central. But we fortunately are in a country where everything matters.
Yeah.
The old matters, the new matters, and everything in between will have to be bridged, and the power lies in that. That's the interesting thing about the Indian opportunity. You, of course, will do a lot in the new AI world, right? But there is an opportunity to kind of do a lot in the old world,
Yeah.
but with a little bit of enablement through tech and AI, where that gives you a new leverage and new economics and
Well, the educations and the things that
every space you will have the old world, and you will have that influence of AI in that world.
Yeah. In fact, that's the other question I wanted to ask you. I've seen you switch world so quickly and so smoothly that at one hand you are the venture investor doing all the quarter and quarter and everything with a startup as a sharp investor, and then suddenly you take a 180-degree turn talking about water, this, that, which is a completely different world. So inhabiting multiple worlds, straddling multiple worlds at the same time, and they are very different worlds, right? How do you do that?
Yeah, so I think it's a challenge I've taken upon myself. So I see that as a challenge that I really enjoy, and I feel that uh, each of these different worlds are opportunities for me to learn, and they build my um, my the ability to kind of fuel my curiosity, and from that, I learned so many things that it keeps expanding my cognitive reserve, and it just helps me a lot more
Multidimensional.
multidimensional and excited about life, right? So um, if this switching context and dealing with these different worlds was a burden, and was kind of pulling me down, then definitely I would have backed off from it. But what I've noticed is that I'm able to uh, multiplex and be able to do these different things, and I really enjoy it. And maybe the underlying driver for me is the people I can meet.
People?
I can meet.
Okay.
The connectedness.
Okay.
That multidimensional worlds also mean my connectedness with multidimensional people, right? So that, I think, is a big bonus for doing this for me, and I really have found a lot of value. And so people say that you benefit a lot from being connected with people, with community, with family, and it just makes you a better person, and gives you so much energy, and I think that is a huge
But do you,
incentive to do this.
Prashant, do you carve out or not carve out, but is it different persona inhabiting different world? Because the kind of things you need to be a sharp investor is very different than the kind of things you need to to be a good philanthropist, a good urban sort of, doing good, working on urban projects, right? So do you?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I have different personas, and I don't know.
you do.
Don't Geminis have this innate
Please shake hands.
yeah, capability to be different personalities? So I think we have. I think I do inhabit
You are
multiple
able to do
worlds,
that.
and when I do inhabit these different worlds, I think I'm a different Prashant, right? Because I'm sitting with politicians and discussing things around the city, and I know, expect a different Prashant, right? I'm sitting with my founders, and discussing something with them on their problems in their startup. I know it's a different Prashant they expect. I'm sitting with civic stakeholders, or artisans, or musicians, or the creative folks. They expect a very different dialogue and different. I, I think the sensibilities that you develop from being able to interact in these different ways is and you start relating to them better. So maybe that's one skill that I have, that I'm able to understand their world, and build sensibilities to that world, so that they feel that I'm actually fitting in the
Part of
world,
them.
part of them. So that's something that maybe I mean, it comes a little bit naturally to me. So I'm not out of place there.
In fact, that's something I do. There are times that sitting in a boardroom and talking to CEOs, and then sitting and interviewing as a journalist, as a former journalist,
Yeah,
interviewing a roadside vendor
correct.
and speaking that language.
Yeah, you're right. It's very similar.
So,
I think but journalists, I think, also need to because they talk to people with so many diverse backgrounds. If they don't make that person comfortable, they're not going to get the purpose served, right?
yeah, yeah.
So maybe I So I sometimes wonder, if I was not doing what I'm doing, what would I be doing, right? Would I be a politician? Because I think politicians also have this.
Would you be a politician, Prashant?
I maybe would have been. I'll never be a politician now, right? Because I know too much about politics to stay away from politics. But I just feel that I have a lot of respect for politicians. I think they have to really, again, be very patient, uh, deal with people with unrealistic expectations, and deal with people who feel that they can change their lives when they know, even the politicians know, they don't control everything. But I think that's another profession where people really are multiple personalities in a sense.
Thanks, Prashant. I'm going to do a quick round of rapid fire question for you, okay? Best investment today, as of today, for you in terms of money and payback?
I would say it's Bluestone.
A deal as an investor that you let go, that you look back, oh wow, it's a multi-bagger. Is there a deal in your head somewhere in the past?
I think we looked at Nikon a couple times and we let go, and we didn't pursue it to a stage where I think Nika would be a miss.
Okay. Startup funding winter. Where are we? End of it? Rebound? Predict where we are headed.
No, we are definitely out of. There is a thaw. There is a lot of green shoots, right? But I think what kind of companies that will get funded has changed forever. Yeah. So it's a new funding environment, and entrepreneurs need to be aware that the game has changed.
The game has changed. 3 things you look for in an entrepreneur.
I like humility and less of arrogance, because I think that has a rub off in everything they do. I like entrepreneurs who have a very strong bias towards understanding India and the realities of India. I like entrepreneurs who are committed to the domain for a good 10-15 years. And they have come to that point where they are committed to the domain after at least a couple years of journey of understanding what it means to pursue the domain and be in that domain. So I think it's important for many domains. Yeah.
You are Apple or Android?
Android, totally. The only Apple device I have is an iPad. Never had an Apple phone. Never had an Apple Watch.
Do you have a reason?
I don't want to be slave to any single ecosystem, and I think I just want the flexibility to pick the brands I want and the devices I want.
2 things, 2 places you would recommend to anybody coming to the city.
Today, I would say I definitely still believe Lal Bagh. I mean, it's close to home, close to my heart. So it's a very unique RM. I definitely recommend it. I also recommend MAP, which is, I think there are 400 years that separate Lal Bagh and MAP, but it's also a very interesting new addition to the city.
Your guilty pleasures.
Bengali sweets. I can't stay away from the best rasgullas. I biryani. I mean, it just so these two, I've been able to cut out a lot of things from my life, but not these two.
So we did some sleuthing around, asking Amita about you, okay? And let me see if you get it right. One habit of Prashanth that bugs everyone in the family. Take a guess.
Yeah, looking at my phone.
Okay. The answer is his constant phone calls. You've got it.
I do.
And him shaking his leg when he sits and talks.
I didn't do that in this podcast.
What blows Prashanth's fuse? Should I tell you what Amita thinks?
Yeah, I don't. This is
Unhealthy food, especially if I have it.
yeah, she. Okay, okay. So
His guilty pleasures, you've got one, right? Bengali sweets
yeah.
and Chinese food.
No, I think
You want to replace it with biryani?
biryani. Yeah.
Okay.
I somehow I've gone through multiple things of whether is it Chinese, is it biryani, is it Chinese, is biryani. I think it's biryani.
Okay. A regret Prashanth carries.
I don't have any regrets.
Wow, your wife knows you very well. She says, I don't think he carries any regret.
Well,
His favorite way to unwind.
you know, I do like music. Arijit Singh is one.
Arijit Singh, huh?
Arijit Singh. I know this sounds very crazy, but find the next thing that I don't understand and try to go deep into that.
So Amita thinks biohacking, his YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's because if there's today that seems to be the place where you want to understand something that you don't understand, you go deep there.
Yeah. Prashanth's comfort food.
Fruits and I would say avocado and what else? Fruits, avocado.
You've got it, Prashanth. She says avocado, a lot of berries, grapefruit, and vegetables. Biryani sometimes. So she's
Yeah, that's comfort.
wow.
I will.
If you guys were to go through a couple test,
Yeah.
you'll get 10 on 10, both of you.
Good. Good.
So yeah, thank you so much, Prashant. Thank you. Lovely to have a conversation with you on this.
Thanks, Malini, and I can tell you that there was a lot of those down memory lane moments that you took me through, which I've not done for a while. So
Yeah, thank you so much.
it was great.